The phone call came on a Wednesday morning while I was teaching a watercolor class at the senior center. I usually keep my phone on silent during classes, but I'd forgotten that morning. The ringtone, a cheerful melody that suddenly felt ominous, echoed through the room full of elderly students, carefully painting seashells. "Excuse me," I said, stepping into the hallway. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize with a local area code. "Hello? Is this Eleanor Whitmore?" The voice was male, professional, with a slight southern accent. "Yes, this is she." "Ms. Whitmore, my name is Daniel Chen. I'm a real estate attorney here in Seabrook. I'm calling because there's been some activity on a property that I believe you own, and I wanted to verify a few details before proceeding." My heart skipped. "What property?" "The beach house at 247 Sandpiper Lane. According to county records, you're listed as the owner. However, I've just received paperwork for a sale that closed 2 weeks ago. The seller was listed as your daughter, Angela Whitmore, acting under power of attorney." The hallway tilted. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" "Your daughter sold the beach house. The sale closed on October 23rd. I'm calling because something in the paperwork seemed irregular, and I wanted to confirm you'd authorize the sale." "I didn't authorize anything. I didn't even know the house was being sold." Silence on the other end. Then carefully, "Miss Whitmore, I think we need to meet in person." "Are you available this afternoon?" I was 71 years old. I'd been teaching art classes for 15 years since retiring from my career as a commercial illustrator. I lived alone in a modest townhouse in Wilmington, North Carolina, about 40 minutes from Seabrook, where the beach house stood, or had stood, or still stood. I didn't even know anymore. The beach house had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather built it in 1952, right after returning from the war. It was nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom cottage with a screened porch and a view of the Atlantic Ocean. But it held every summer of my childhood, every family gathering, every important moment that defined who I was. When my husband Richard died 5 years ago, the house became even more precious. It was where we'd spent our honeymoon, where we'd raised our daughter Angela, where Richard had proposed to me 45 years earlier on a moonlit beach. I'd offered to let Angela use it whenever she wanted. She'd always loved that house growing up. She'd gotten married there, had her wedding reception on the back deck overlooking the ocean. Her son Michael had taken his first steps on that sandy beach. But I'd never, not for 1 second, considered selling it. Daniel Chen's office was in a small building near the Seabrook courthouse. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with wire-rimmed glasses and an expression of genuine concern. "Ms. Whitmore, thank you for coming. Please sit down." He had a folder open on his desk, thick with documents. I could see copies of deeds, sale agreements, legal forms with signatures and notary stamps. "Can you explain to me what happened?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. 2 weeks ago, a sale closed on your property. The buyer was a development company called Coastal Properties, LLC. They purchased the house and the land for $1.2 million. The number stunned me. I'd known the property had value. Beachfront property in Seabrook had become incredibly expensive. But hearing the actual figure made it real in a way it hadn't been before. The seller was listed as your daughter, Angela Whitmore Hayes. She presented a power of attorney document that gave her authority to act on your behalf in property transactions. I never gave her power of attorney, not for this. Daniel nodded slowly. That's what concerned me. I represent the buyers in this transaction, and part of my due diligence is verifying that all the legal documentation is legitimate. When I looked at the power of attorney, something felt off. He turned his computer screen toward me. On it was a scanned document, official-looking, with legal language and signatures. "This is the power of attorney your daughter provided. It's dated 3 years ago and notarized by someone in Wilmington. According to this document, you gave Angela full authority to manage your affairs, including selling property." I studied the signature. It looked like mine. The notary stamp looked official. Even the date seemed plausible. 3 years ago, I'd been dealing with a bout of pneumonia and had been hospitalized for a week. "I didn't sign this," I said. "Are you certain?" Absolutely certain. I've never given anyone power of attorney. When I was sick 3 years ago, Angela helped me with bills and groceries, but I never signed any legal documents. Daniel leaned back in his chair. Then we have a problem. Because either this document is forged, or there's been a significant misunderstanding. Either way, the sale of your house may not be legal. What happens now? Now we investigate. I'll need to verify the authenticity of this power of attorney. We'll need to check with the notary, examine the original document if it still exists, and determine whether your signature is genuine. If it's not, if this was forged, then your daughter has committed fraud and the sale is invalid. And if the sale is invalid, then the house is still legally yours. The buyers would get their money back and the property would revert to you. But Ms. Whitmore, I need to be honest with you. This kind of case can get very complicated. There's going to be litigation, there will be lawyers and court dates and a lot of stress. And if your daughter did forge this document, she's facing serious criminal charges. I thought about Angela, my only child, the girl I'd raised, had sacrificed for, had loved unconditionally for 46 years. Could she have done this? Could she have forged my signature and sold my family home without my knowledge or permission? I need to talk to her, I said. I'd advise against that until we verified the document. If she knows we're investigating, she might... She's my daughter. I'm going to talk to her. I called Angela from the parking lot. She answered on the third ring, her voice bright and unsuspecting. Mom! Hi, I was just thinking about you. Angela, I need to talk to you about something important. Can I come over? Right now? I'm kind of in the middle of... Right now, it's urgent. There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, became guarded. What's this about? The beach house. Silence. Long, heavy silence. I'll be home, she said finally, and hung up. Angela lived in a large house in one of Wilmington's newer developments. She and her husband, Brad, were both successful. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep. He was an engineer. They drove new cars, took expensive vacations, sent their son to private school. They lived the kind of life Richard and I had never quite achieved. Angela opened the door before I could knock. She looked nervous, which told me everything I needed to know. Mom, come in. We sat in her living room. All white furniture and abstract art, nothing like the comfortable, lived-in spaces I preferred. She didn't offer me coffee or tea. She just sat across from me, waiting. I got a call today from a lawyer in Seabrook. He told me the beach house was sold 2 weeks ago for $1.2 million. Angela's face went pale, then flushed red. Mom, I can explain. You sold my house without telling me. It wasn't like that. I was going to tell you. I was waiting for the right time. The right time? Angela, that house has been in our family for 70 years. It's where your father proposed to me, where you grew up, where your son learned to swim, and you sold it without even asking me? I did it for you. Her voice rose defensively. Mom, you're 71 years old. You can't maintain that house anymore. The property taxes alone are $15,000 a year. The insurance is astronomical. Every hurricane season, I worry about whether it'll still be standing. I was trying to protect you from the burden. By stealing from me? I didn't steal. The money is in an account for you. All $1.2 million. I set up a trust so you'd be taken care of for the rest of your life. You'll never have to worry about money again. I want the house back. That's not possible. The sale is final. The new owners have already taken possession. They're planning to tear it down and build a luxury development. The words hit me like a physical blow. Tear it down. My grandfather's house. The walls that held 3 generations of memories. Gone. How could you? My voice cracked. How could you do this without asking me? Because you would have said no. You're stubborn and sentimental, and you refuse to see reality. That house is a liability, Mom. It's old, it needs constant repairs, and it's sitting on property worth millions. Selling it was the smart thing to do. It wasn't your decision to make. Actually, it was. You gave me power of attorney 3 years ago when you were in the hospital. You said I should handle things if you couldn't. This is me handling things. I stood up, my hands shaking with anger and betrayal. "I never gave you power of attorney, Angela. Not for this, not for anything." Her expression flickered, just for a moment, and I saw fear there. "Yes, you did. You were sick. You don't remember." "I remember perfectly. I asked you to pay some bills and pick up groceries. I never signed any legal documents." "You did. You just don't remember because of the medication. Show me the document." "What?" "The power of attorney I supposedly signed." "Show it to me." "I don't have it here." "It's with my attorney." "Then we'll go to your attorney right now." "Mom, you're being unreasonable." "I'm being unreasonable?" "You forged my signature, sold my house, and you think I'm being unreasonable?" The word forged hung in the air between us like an accusation that couldn't be taken back. Angela's face hardened. "I did what needed to be done. I'm sorry you're upset, but you'll understand eventually. The money is yours. You're set for life. You should be thanking me." "Thanking you?" "Angela, I want my house back. I want you to undo this." "I can't." "Then I'll get a lawyer. I'll sue you. I'll press criminal charges if I have to." "You wouldn't do that." "I'm your daughter. You were my daughter. Right now, you're a stranger who stole from me." I left before she could respond. My whole body was shaking as I drove home. I'd raised that girl. I'd sacrificed my career opportunities to be a present mother. Richard and I had paid for her college, had helped with her wedding, had been there for every moment of her life. And she'd repaid me by forging my signature and selling the most precious thing I owned. That evening, I called Daniel Chen. I talked to Angela. She admits she sold the house, but she claims I gave her power of attorney 3 years ago. I didn't. I'm certain I didn't. Then we need to prove it. I'm going to start the legal process tomorrow. I'll contact the notary who supposedly witnessed the signature, and I'll have a handwriting expert examine the document. In the meantime, you should hire your own attorney, someone who specializes in elder financial abuse. Elder financial abuse. The phrase made me feel old and vulnerable in a way I hadn't before. That's what this is, Ms. Whitmore. Your daughter used a forged legal document to steal property worth over $1 million. That's serious fraud. I hired an attorney named Margaret Reeves. She was in her 60s, had been practicing for 40 years, and had seen cases like mine dozens of times. Unfortunately, she told me during our first meeting, financial abuse by family members is more common than people think. Adult children forge power of attorney documents all the time to gain access to their parents' assets. The average victim loses about $120,000. You're looking at a much larger loss. Can we get the house back? Possibly. If we can prove the power of attorney was forged, the sale is void. But there's a complication. The buyers purchased the property in good faith. They had no reason to suspect fraud. So even if we prove the document was forged, the buyers might have a claim against you for the money they spent on the property. But I didn't sell it to them. Angela did. True. But from a legal standpoint, untangling this mess is going to be complex. The buyers, Angela, the title company, the notary, everyone could potentially face liability. It's going to take time and money to sort out. Over the next 3 weeks, Margaret's team conducted a thorough investigation. They interviewed the notary who'd supposedly witnessed my signature, a woman named Janet Friedman, who worked at a UPS store in Wilmington. "I remember notarizing a power of attorney document 3 years ago," Janet said in her deposition. "A woman came in with her mother. The mother looked elderly and seemed a little confused, but she signed the document in front of me, and I notarized it. But when they showed Janet my photograph, she hesitated. I'm not entirely certain that's the woman I saw. It was 3 years ago. I notarized dozens of documents every week. But when they showed Janet my photograph, she hesitated. I'm not entirely certain that's the woman I saw. It was 3 years ago. I notarized dozens of documents every week. Then they brought in a handwriting expert named Dr. Patricia Morrison. She examined the signature on the power of attorney document and compared it to my genuine signatures on other documents, tax returns, checks, letters. Her report was definitive. The signature on the power of attorney document shows clear signs of forgery. The pressure points are inconsistent with the reference signatures. The letter formations, particularly the capital E and the final E in Whitmore, show hesitation marks typical of someone copying rather than naturally writing. In my professional opinion, this signature was not written by Eleanor Whitmore. With that evidence, Margaret filed a lawsuit. We sued Angela for fraud, we sued the buyers to void the sale, and we filed a criminal complaint with the district attorney's office. The legal process was exhausting. There were depositions, hearings, motions. Angela hired an expensive attorney who argued that the handwriting analysis was inconclusive, that the notary had confirmed witnessing the signature, that I was simply an elderly woman with memory problems who'd forgotten signing the document. The media picked up the story. Daughter accused of selling mother's beach house read the headlines. I gave one interview to a local reporter explaining what had happened. The article was sympathetic to me, but the comments section was divided. How could a mother sue her own daughter? This old lady probably did sign it and forgot. Families are so greedy these days. 6 months into the litigation, Margaret called me with news. Eleanor, I need to tell you something. The buyer's attorney found something interesting while going through the title history of the property. What is it? Apparently, when your grandfather built the house in 1952, he filed a document called a life estate deed. Do you know what that is? No. A life estate deed means that while your grandfather owned the property, he designated that it could never be sold without the consent of all his direct descendants. It's an old-fashioned legal mechanism that's rarely used anymore. The document was filed with the county, but was never updated when your grandfather died or when your father died. According to this document, the house can only be sold with the unanimous consent of everyone in the direct family line. What does that mean? It means that even if Angela did have legitimate power of attorney, she still couldn't legally sell the house without your explicit consent. The life estate clause requires you to personally agree to any sale. A power of attorney doesn't override that requirement. I felt something loosen in my chest. So, the sale was never legal? The sale was never legal. Angela couldn't have sold that house even with a legitimate power of attorney. And she definitely couldn't sell it with a forged one. The document Margaret showed me was yellowed with age, filed in the Seabrook County Clerk's office on June 3, 1952. My grandfather's signature was at the bottom, along with a notary stamp and an official seal. Life estate deed. This property at 247 Sandpiper Lane shall remain in the possession of the Whitmore family in perpetuity. No sale or transfer of this property shall be valid without the written, notarized consent of all living direct descendants of Henry James Whitmore, my grandfather. He'd built that house with his own hands and had made sure, legally, that it would stay in the family. He'd protected it 70 years ago, and that protection was still in force. When Margaret presented this document in court, Angela's attorney went pale. The buyer's attorney looked furious. The judge asked for a recess to review the filing. When court resumed, the judge's ruling was clear. Given the existence of the life estate deed, which was properly filed and never rescinded, the sale of the property was invalid from the moment it was executed. The power of attorney, whether legitimate or forged, does not supersede the life estate requirement. The property will be returned to Miss Eleanor Whitmore. The buyers will be refunded their purchase price plus damages. Ms. Angela Whitmore Hayes will be responsible for all financial penalties associated with the invalid sale. Angela was sitting 3 rows behind me with Brad. I didn't turn around, but I heard her gasp. The financial penalties were substantial. Angela had to pay back the buyers $1.2 million, plus legal fees, plus damages for their time and trouble. The total came to nearly $1.5 million. She didn't have that kind of money. They'd already spent a significant portion of what they'd received from the sale: a new car, a vacation home in the mountains, private school tuition paid in advance for 3 years. They had to take out loans. They had to sell their vacation home. Brad's parents had to help with the legal fees. Their comfortable life became significantly less comfortable. The criminal charges were more complicated. The district attorney decided to pursue the forgery case. Angela was charged with felony fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse. Each charge carried a potential prison sentence. Brad called me one evening, 6 months after the court ruling. His voice was tired, defeated. "Eleanor, I know Angela made terrible decisions. I know what she did was wrong, but she's facing 5 years in prison. Our son is 11 years old. He needs his mother. I'm begging you. Is there any way you could convince the DA to reduce the charges?" "Why would I do that?" "Because she's your daughter. Because despite everything, she's still family. She forged my signature and stole my home. She showed no remorse until she got caught. Why should I show her mercy? Because that's what good people do. They forgive." I thought about it for a long time. About Angela as a little girl, learning to swim in the ocean by that beach house. About her wedding on the back deck. About family dinners and Christmas mornings and all the love I'd poured into raising her. But I also thought about the betrayal, the lies, the absolute certainty in her voice when she told me I should be thanking her. Tell Angela that if she wants mercy, she needs to do 3 things. First, she needs to write me a letter, a real letter, handwritten, explaining why she did what she did and taking full responsibility without excuses. Second, she needs to publicly apologize. Not a legal statement, but a genuine apology acknowledging the harm she caused. Third, she needs to commit to therapy to understand why she thought stealing from her mother was acceptable. And if she does those things, then I'll talk to the DA about reducing the charges. But Brad, understand this. My relationship with Angela is over. Even if she does everything I've asked, even if she somehow makes amends, I will never trust her again. She can be Michael's mother, she can be your wife, but she won't be my daughter, not in any meaningful way. The line was quiet. I'll tell her. Angela did write the letter. It was 7 pages long, handwritten on cream-colored stationery. She explained that she'd been stressed about money, that she and Brad had made bad investments, that they were facing financial pressure, and the beach house had seemed like a solution. She explained that she'd convinced herself she was helping me, that she'd rationalized the forgery by telling herself I would have agreed if I'd been thinking clearly. She acknowledged that she'd been wrong, that she'd let greed and fear override her morals, that she'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. The letter felt genuine, but letters are easy. Words are easy. Trust is hard. She also did a video apology that went viral on social media. She sat in her living room, looking exhausted and remorseful, and told the whole story. She admitted the forgery. She acknowledged the betrayal. She warned other adult children about the temptation to manage their parents' finances without consent. "I convinced myself I knew better than my mother," she said into the camera. "I told myself I was protecting her, but I was really protecting my own financial interests. What I did was theft. It was abuse, and I will regret it for the rest of my life." The video got millions of views. The comments were harsh, but she didn't delete it. She left it up as public penance. She also started therapy, and after 6 months of sessions, her therapist sent a letter to the court explaining that Angela was genuinely working to understand her behavior and was unlikely to reoffend. I talked to the district attorney. I explained that while I couldn't forgive what Angela had done, I didn't want to see her go to prison. Not for 5 years. Not when she had a young son who needed her. The DA agreed to a plea deal. Angela pleaded guilty to 1 count of fraud. She received 3 years of probation, community service, and a permanent criminal record. She'd never be able to work in pharmaceutical sales again. Background checks would always show her fraud conviction. But she wouldn't go to prison. The beach house was returned to me. The new owners had done some renovations before the sale was voided, and I let them keep those improvements. They'd acted in good faith, and I didn't want to punish them for Angela's fraud. I spent my first night back in the house 9 months after I'd learned it had been sold. I walked through the rooms slowly, touching the walls, looking at the ocean through the windows. It was smaller than I remembered, more worn, but it was mine. It was still standing. I sat on the back deck with a cup of tea and watched the sunset. The waves were gentle that evening, rolling in with a rhythm that hadn't changed in 70 years. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael, Angela's son. "Grandma, thank you for not letting Mom go to prison. I know she hurt you, but she's still my mom. I love you." I wrote back, I love you too, sweetheart. Angela and I don't speak. Maybe we will someday. Maybe time and therapy and genuine change will make a relationship possible again. But for now, the silence is necessary. I can't trust her. I'm not sure I'll ever be able to trust her again, but I have my house. I have the place where my grandfather hammered nails and my father painted walls, and Richard proposed under a full moon. I have the deck where Angela got married, back when I still believed she valued family over money. I've started teaching art classes on that back deck in the summers. Local kids come and paint watercolors of the ocean. I charge nothing. It's my way of keeping the house alive, of making sure it remains a place of creation and memory rather than just a piece of real estate. One of the kids asked me recently why I didn't just sell the house and use the money to travel or live somewhere easier. Because some things aren't about money, I told him. Some things are about continuity, about honoring the people who came before you, about creating a space where memories can live. But it's just a house, he said. No, I replied. It's never just a house. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I'm 72 years old. My daughter forged my signature and sold my family beach house for $1.2 million. But she forgot about one document, a life estate deed filed 70 years ago by a grandfather who understood that some things should never be sold. That document saved my home. That document proved that sometimes our ancestors protect us in ways we don't discover until we need them most. If you're an older adult with valuable property, protect it. File the right documents, know your rights, and be aware that financial abuse from family members is more common than anyone wants to admit. The people who hurt us most are often the ones we trust completely. And if you're an adult child managing your parents' affairs, remember this. Power of attorney is a responsibility, not an opportunity. It's about serving their interests, not yours. The moment you start making decisions based on what benefits you, you've crossed a line from caregiver to thief. My house is still standing. My grandfather's legacy is still intact. And every sunset I watch from that back deck is a reminder that some things, some precious things, are worth fighting for. Even when the fight is against your own daughter. Even when winning means losing something you can never get back. Some battles have to be fought. Some truths have to be defended. Some houses have to remain standing, no matter the cost.